On this episode of My Take Radio Behind the Mic, we sit down with stand-up comedian Hugh Murray, and we discuss, of course, stand-up comedy, blogging, relationships, and a host of other stuff. Plus, of course, we have a few laughs as well. My Take Radio Behind the Mic with Hugh Murray starts right now. This is My Take Radio's Behind the Mic. Welcome to a brand new installment of My Take Radio's Behind the Mic interview series. This week it's a little bit of a departure from our usual vloggers and podcasters. We're actually speaking to comedian, writer, philanthropist, gentleman, and liar. Wow, I fucking fucked that up. The one and only Hugh Daniel Murray IV. I'm just going to call him Hugh Murray just to not put him on the spot by putting his government name out there. Hugh, what's going on, brother? Thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to come on board and talk with us.
Not much, man. I love being on the podcast scene. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, for those of you that aren't familiar with Hugh's work, Hugh is a guy, a Long Island guy, local New Yorker. I've been friends with him on social media for a couple of years now. We were talking about that before we started recording, about just how I can't even pinpoint exactly how we connected. And, I really felt that I wanted to get him on just because he has that same vibe, that same caustic and abrasive style of humor that I just personally like using on air. So it was a natural fit that we would get him on. I'm personally bummed that it took me this long to set it up, but I'm glad to have him on board. So I figured let's start with the most obvious, the most blatantly bullshit question. What got you into comedy?
I actually love this question because so many people, when I ask them, like, how'd you get into it? They're always like, well, I was voted class clown and all my friends told me how funny I am. Like, dude, it's the complete opposite with me. Like, no one thought I was funny. Like, no one.
Holy shit, really?
Yeah, like, my friends, like, they're like, are you really going to do this? Like, I'm probably the least funniest of all my friends. And I don't know, like, they finally came and saw me on stand-up, and they're just like, dude, like, you're a natural at this. Like, when you're out with us, you're a dick, and no one thinks you're funny. And I just, like, always love stand-up comedy. It's just it's always like I studied it, man. I grew up like 2 blocks away from Governor's Comedy Club.
Right.
So it was always like, I was always going to see the great people. I can remember seeing Louis C.K. like 8 years ago. And I could walk there. And, like, I always used to just break it down, and I started learning how to write a joke. And I never took a comedy class or anything, but I just grinded it out, and it was just always something that I loved,
Well, here's the funny thing about that is that when you're amongst your peers, and it's funny because I'm going to see if you have the same problem. When you're trying to be just sarcastic or just an asshole, naturally, people find it funny. Like, they always think you're constantly joking, even when you're being completely serious. Yeah. Do you run into that a lot? Was that kind of like a catalyst for you when you started doing comedy? Just being yourself and being dry or caustic, everybody was just like, oh, that guy's pretty funny. And you're like, I'm really not joking.
Yeah, it actually became like a card that I was able to pull. Like, when I crossed that line with people, and, like, they would get mad at me, my friends would actually, like, come over and save me and be like, he's just a comic, he's joking. It started becoming like the ace of spades I could throw on the table, like, to avoid a fist fight or have some girl freak out on me. It was like, yeah, no, I'm just a comedian, I'm just playing around. But a lot of times people would, like, I'd be like 100% serious, they start laughing, and I'm just like, I'm not even gonna push the issue. Yeah. I don't care that much.
Well, you mentioning that you grew up around Governor's Comedy Club, I want to kind of talk about that. The Long Island comedy scene is extremely underrated, I feel. I mean, a lot more comedians are performing out in Governors. A lot of guys are doing more stuff on the island. I mean, as a huge wrestling fan, Mick Foley, a Long Island guy through and through. I always hear of him doing sets at Governor's. Just give us a little bit about how the Long Island comedy scene is versus, say, the city, the Manhattan comedy scene that's all, trying to get tourists and the guy outside handing you a fucking flyer.
Yeah, it's a big difference. One thing that you really notice, the city is more alternative. I would say the city is more like a Eugene Merman or Patton Oswalt, where you're going to get like almost that hipster brand of comedy.
Right.
On Long Island, you get a lot of guys wearing suits. It's very, I don't want to say classier, but like a lot of the top comedy clubs in the city are almost like grungy.
Right.
Like you go to Long Island, you get in a very classy atmosphere. A lot of people start in Long Island and then they make the transition to the city. You really can't do it the other way around. If you really can't start in the city, get that New York City sense of humor, and then come to Long Island, because you will bomb. I feel like if you play Long Island, especially Suffolk County, you could play anywhere, because it's a different animal out there. But you get some great comics like. I don't know do you know Joey Cola?
Yeah, I've heard Joey Cola, I think once or twice. I think he's done a spot on O&A.
Yes, Joey Cola. Joey Cola is Long Island comedy, 30-year veteran. You could catch him at one of the clubs. Like, he's a warm-up comic, I think, for Rachel Ray right now. Don't quote me on it, but he's a phenomenal guy. He's hilarious. You get guys like Chris Monty, and then that's like in the governor's circuit, and then you get guys that are really grinding it out, like George Gallo and Terry McNeely. They run their own circuit of shows in the bar scene, so you get like different comedy atmospheres at different places. Like George and Terry are very abrasive style comedy, and they do so well in the bar scene that they don't even need to perform the clubs.
Well, let's go a little bit into material. I mean, material on the island versus material in the city clubs. How do you tailor that? Because I saw one of your sets, and we'll get into it a little later on YouTube, and I saw that during that set there was a lot of not side commentary, but the audience was kind of more interactive versus when you go see comedy in the city, you see more of, shut the fuck up, I'm going to do my set in 5 minutes and that's it. Do you appreciate more the interactions with the audience from a stand-up standpoint on the island, or do you like, hey, I want to come in, I want you guys to appreciate my set and laugh, but don't disrupt it with side commentary?
I'm not one to really get upset with hecklers. Like some people it would really disrupt the flow. I don't want to blow my own horn, but I do well with a heckler. Like we were just talking about Colin Kane. He gets phenomenal crowd work. You get guys like him and Godfrey that their crowd work is impeccable. In Long Island, like I said, the atmosphere, the club's managers will pull a heckler aside and be like, listen, if you don't shut up, we're going to kick you out of here. The city, like you were saying, there's a lot more tourists.
Right.
You could be performing at Broadway Comedy Club and you get a bus full of Asian people that don't even speak English.
Right.
So it's really hard to gauge laughter in the city because sometimes it's not you. You really are playing to an audience that might not understand what you're saying. And in Long Island, the joke material, it's more family orientated. They kind of ask you to be cleaner.
Right.
Not like squeaky clean, but there's they don't want you just going up there saying a bunch of dick and pussy jokes, and because a lot of Long Island comedy is fundraisers.
Right.
And that's actually how the circuit goes. You start at the open mic, and then you get passed to do spots on fundraisers. So you're doing a lot of soccer moms and benefits, and they don't want that dirty, grungy style of comedy. You could get a little black, but you don't want to get blue.
Right.
If you know the difference. Like blue would be more curse words and
right.
and silly poop jokes, while black is like a darker Louis C.K. style of comedy.
Right. They don't want they want good laughs, but not self-hatred, or, you know, I woke up this morning, put a bag over my head, and I waited 5 minutes before I popped a hole in it type comedy. You know, I definitely, I can understand that. The funny thing is with that and talking about that, do you feel, and I know I think it was a month or two ago you went on tour also, you did a couple of states.
Yes.
So how do you transition from that, from doing like the local comedy? Like I can imagine, you know, you do a set here on the here on the island versus in the boroughs, and on the island you could joke about the towns and, you know, getting shot in Wyandanch versus you know, joking about in the city and Bloomberg looking like a turtle versus, you know, going around the country. How does that transition work for you creatively? Do you have just different sets of material, or do you just sometimes you just wing it and just reapply it a little differently?
Well, my set has really been geared towards talking about my life and painting a picture about what I'm doing as a person and what I'm into and, you know, what I've been through. So it kind of works everywhere, but I've noticed that when you go out of state and you go to a place, and like, you know, you usually get introduced like, hey, these guys are all the way from New York, and, you know, like, if you pick up on some little things about their town and area, the crowd really starts to respect you as a comic, because they know you just wrote that, you know, within, you know, 24 hours, you know, like, say you get there on a Friday, you're doing a weekend, you know, and you notice, like, I know in Bristol, Pennsylvania, there's this hairpin turn right before a cemetery that's a block away from the comedy club.
Oh, shit.
So George Gallo, he does a great joke about how that there's like gravediggers on call that just wait for drunk drivers to get into the car accident, and they just pour the dirt right over the car.
Well played.
It's really good, because all the locals are like, wow, like, you know, he notices things about our town. You know, he's not just doing jokes about the subway in New York. Because if you go, you know, I went with George and Terry. We went to Ohio, Indiana, and then we did 5 shows in Milwaukee. So we can't be doing jokes about the subway or the LIRR or, you know, what's how much traffic's on the LIE. These people don't know what the hell that is.
Right.
You know, I do a joke about Billy Joel crashing through people's houses. That didn't make the news in Milwaukee.
Nope.
You know, so it's like you kind of gotta, you know, you can't get too stuck on the local humor. But what I've really geared my set towards is, you know, my life experiences. And if you know, you're kind of painting a picture with your words, and if you do it well enough, people are going to understand what you're about as a person, no matter where you go.
Well, do you feel that personal connection humor would, you know, is better to bridge the gap versus the staple stuff? I mean, you're citing, you know, your experiences. I mean, Louis C.K. does that. I mean, to a degree, and I'm no comic. I always make sure to throw a lot of real life stuff into the show, because it helps people connect with you on a different level. And do you think that personal connection comedy is more intimate versus just I'm gonna pluck 5 stories out of the paper and ran on that?
Yeah, you know what? I think comedy took that turn with Louis C.K. I think in the 80s, everybody was about that observational, we all do this type thing.
Right.
And then recently, in like the last 10 years, maybe, it really morphed into, we all do this, but what are my feelings behind that?
Right.
You know, and what am I doing as a person? And, you know, it became very individual, like, and you're kind of making that connection on a deeper level, rather than, like, you know, Jerry Seinfeld, like, what's the deal with singing in the shower? You know, like it like in the 80s, that was great, and, you know, everybody loved it. But now it's like, you ever sing in the shower and then feel like a jerk off because your neighbor hears you?
Right.
And it goes into that, like, shameful feeling about it, you know? And I really think it like took a darker turn, and people are liking that, you know, like I think people are going out to see, like, you know, Patton Oswalt and Louis C.K. and Kevin Hart, who are kind of like sharing about, like, their feelings towards situations rather than just the situation themselves.
Well, I wanna go into something that has been an alarming trend as of late. First off, you talked about Jerry Seinfeld. I love comedy. I love stand up. If there's one guy I can't fucking stand, it's Jerry Seinfeld. Why? I don't know. I think maybe it's just because I couldn't get into the show, or it was just, why is the weather like? I'm like, oh, shut the fuck up. I didn't feel that connection. Maybe that's it. But
Yeah, you do a good Seinfeld.
yeah, it's okay. It's just that, you know what it is, from hearing everywhere I went, especially being an 80s and 90s baby. You wait in a doctor's office, it's Seinfeld reruns, and the stupid jingle in the background, and he comes in. I'm just like, oh my god, I couldn't get into it. I like exactly that, the personal connection humor. I like that particular facet, because I feel that you get a better insight into the comic. You connect with them more, and it's not just, oh, these guys sit in a room all day and write jokes. It's like, hey, this guy, he hates his 9-to-5 job, or he hates that he has to do this and this and this, or he hated that he have to do that, and it helps you just cope better by finding people that share the same trials and tribulations, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you're like a lot of people that dislike Seinfeld. I kind of respect what he does, because, yeah, he's a fucking billionaire, and he's really trying to reinvent himself. And I think him and Dane Cook, they're kind of having the same struggle, where I think it was overexposure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That people like, yeah, and I think Daniel Tosh and this is my personal feeling, I think he's going to have that same issue.
Yep.
Is that people are getting too much of them, and who knows, maybe Kevin Hart will burn out like that. But when you're in everything and you're everywhere, people are just like, ugh, enough. And I actually start seeing people are turning on Louis C.K. And I think he's brilliant. He's probably my favorite comic of all time. And like I think it's the overexposure. But I also liked what you said, how you relate to the comic more, because to me it's actually easier to write jokes like that.
Right.
For me, it's easier to come up with material about who I am as a person and what I've been through, because number one, it's going to be exclusive to my act. So if someone rips off one of my jokes, or like whatever, I could come up with more, because it's all stemming from my brain. It's not just like I'm reading the New York Post and making a bunch of headlines.
Yep.
I think that's actually harder to sit down and write about current events than it is to be like, oh, well, this happened when I was 12. That's pretty funny. Let me talk about it. And, say that bit, goes stale, or I get it on TV, or, whatever. It's like I could come up with more of that material, because it's all stemming from personal experience. I don't know. I just find that easier to write like that.
Yeah, I feel that, and this is something that's been happening. It's a trend I've noticed the last couple of years, that comedy's gone in a very weird cycle, because people want to be shocked and awed, but you can't shock and awe them too much, because then when you're too brutally honest, people get offended, which is, it leads me to my next question. Do you feel that comedy has become more abrasive, but people have become more sensitive at the same time?
I always struggle with this, because you get into that George Carlin school of thought,
right,
where it's like, you got to find the line and purposely cross it.
Absolutely.
But then I also don't want to be offensive to just be offensive. Like I don't know. I think any hack could do that.
Yep.
I like to try to deliver something I like to think that the comedian is like the modern day philosopher, and I don't know if that's self-serving, but like you're basically getting paid to talk. Not many other professions can do that, and you get to like tell people your views on something. Like you don't just have to go up there and like back in the day with Rodney Dangerfield and Don Rickles, like they were like jokey joke comedians,
Right.
And like now, like I feel like people want to hear your opinions and your issues, and I think people like you know, you see it with like George Carlin, where, you know, he got very political towards the end of his career, you know, because I think you start to realize, like, listen, I got an hour up here with a microphone and a captive audience, and I could say whatever I want. What can I do to help this world? You know, it becomes like a big thing. I personally feel I'm not on that level where I'm trying to change the world, but when you're as popular as like George Carlin, it's like, you know, I could actually use my voice to do something and try to change what I think is shitty.
Oh, I think that's a great way to look at it. I mean, I you know, growing up, you know, I used to watch Comic Relief on HBO and things like that, and as I got older, I really started just gravitating more towards, you know, guys like Carlin, guys like Louis C.K., Louis Black, which is one of my favorites, because I see that even though these guys can come out here and they have this captive audience, even in their comedy, there's still a message. And I think the best messages are the ones that you don't even know you're getting till after the fact.
Yes, and I'm total agreement with you on that, man.
You know, you come in, you watch a set, you laugh, whatever, and then later on you're laughing about it, and you're like, wow, that's true. I mean, you know, my wife she laughs because we were talking about like soy milk, and I said it should be called soy juice, and you know, that was a Louis Black bit, and it wasn't intentional in the least, but it was that sort of an observation that I'm like, you know what, he's fucking right.
Yeah,
you know, there's no nipple on a soybean. You know, you're not milking a soybean, and it's funny because as you know, sophomore as that is, it's like, it's true, and I think that comedy now needs to be more of that. You need to be not only entertained but engaged.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you get, like, those are the best bits, are the ones that stick with you for a long, long time, you know? And, like, I saw, what is it, Uprox or Uprox? I don't even know how to say their name. Uprox. And they posted, I reshared it on Facebook with 7 Bill Burr bits.
Yep.
Where he gets progressively angry.
Yep.
But, you know, like, I think some of those bits are just pure gold because he has such a message behind it, you
That's
know,
right.
like that, how women fight and, you know, the toughest job in the world, like where he's talking about how Oprah says the hardest job in the world is a mom.
Right.
And he's like, how would you know? You don't even have kids.
Exactly. It's hard to empathize. It's like, lady, you don't got a single kid. No kid has ever tumbled out of your womb. So for you to say that, it's just, you want to. That's a catering thing at this point.
Yeah, and you know, he starts getting into like no stay-at-home mom has ever gotten the black lung, and you know, he starts and like, it's like that bit is like always stuck with me, and it's like, you know, like Louis C.K.'s like where I love it. I think it's the most brilliantly written bit is the sometimes or no, what is it? Of course and maybe that he did on the Oh My God special.
I think I remember that. Was that the one where he was talking about his daughters?
No, it was about like the peanut allergies. And,
yeah. I remember a little bit of that.
You know, it's like, of course we got to cater to people with peanut allergies, but maybe if we just closed our eyes for a couple of years, all the kids with peanut allergies would be gone and it's not an issue anymore. You know, and it's like he does this, of course we have to do it this way.
Right.
But maybe if we did it this way, and, you know, it has like a message behind it, and it's funny and it's kind of wrong, but, you know, when you think about it, in the end, he's right, you know?
Well, it's funny because Rogan did something similar to where he was talking about what would happen if all the smart people died, and he's like, we'd all be living in caves and come out and spear everybody. It was exactly that, because you don't really, and this is, you know, one of the gifts of stand-up, and, you know, I commend you for having it, because it's like, you don't observe that stuff being a regular person. Like I always say, you got to have a special set of skills to do stand-up. Stand-up's not for everybody. Just because, and it was funny you said that, just because, you know, you're funny with your boys doesn't mean you should go get on stage. You're just funny with in your circle of friends. Like, you know, I don't consider myself funny. I consider myself, you know, I always tell people on air, I'm like, I'm a piece of shit, you know, but I'm human garbage, but I always say it in a way that it's funny, but not funny enough for me to say I'm going to go stand in front of a mic in front of a room full of 1,000 people and air
Yeah,
my laundry. That takes
well,
some brass balls, man.
well, first of all, most comics see things a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like they'll find the funny in, you know, something that's boring
Yep.
or messed up, that where, you know, like we're usually the type of people that are laughing at a funeral, you
Yep.
know, and I that's one way to look at it. And then there's, you know, there's tons of funny people. Like I said, and when I'm out with my friends, I'm the least funniest person,
Right.
but every other one of my friends wouldn't be able to translate their type of funny to the stage.
Right.
You know, whether, like, because there's a lot of stuff that happens to me in my daily life where I'm just like, how can I get an audience to find that funny? You know, like, you can't sit there and tell them a 5-minute story. You know, like, it's like when you're like taught, like, if you have something funny happen to you with one group of friends and then you go hang out with your girlfriend's group of friends and you try to tell them that story, and you end with, you should have been there.
Yep.
That wouldn't translate well to the stage. You know, you gotta paint that picture for the audience like they are there.
Well, when you talk about that with your friends, it boils down to like the guy, like the guy that's a martial artist and he's out with his friends and a fight breaks out and he doesn't want to get involved because he knows he'd probably kill everyone. Do you feel the same way from a comedic standpoint? Like, you're out with the boys and they're all joking around and you're like, I can't do it because I'm just gonna drop hot lava on everybody. Do you feel sometimes you gotta tone it down for your own, just to stay on the level with everybody else? Does that happen?
I love that analogy. Sometimes I when I get out, I like to set up for the next joke. Like, sometimes, like, I'm so far ahead of people where it's just like, I'll set one of my other friends up for the funnier line,
right,
rather than, you know, take the easy swing myself.
Right.
You know, because I don't know, then people are just like, oh, he's a comedian, and then they'll like break
off.
my yeah, like, yeah, just showing off, you know. It's like, yeah, I could just go out in a room and choke people out, you know, but
right,
it's like, you know, I'd rather let you guys have your moment because I'm going to do it in front of 300 people on Friday.
Right. And the funny thing is, it's almost like, in a way, those instances for you, and, you know, I could be wrong, they're warm up. You know, it's like you're taking practice swings by just being out interacting with the world, because inspiration comes from the unlikeliest of places. Like, you were talking about just something that you find mundane in the day-to-day life. Like, I told a story about, I shoved a kid into a pile of toilet paper in Target, and everybody thought it was fucking amazing, and it happened because of frustration, but everybody found it to be utterly hilarious. Here I'm waiting for when I said it on air, like, just talking with the listeners, I was like, oh man, everybody's gonna say I'm a piece of shit. And then I'm like, yeah, kids running around the store, knocked into me. I shoved them into a big pile of Bounty toilet paper in the corner, and it all fell on him in the end cap in Target in Westbury. He's like, Mom, and I just ran out of the store. But that's the kind of stuff. Like to you see, you laugh at that because that's observational. To me, I'm like, it's just every day. But to everybody else, it's like, oh my God, it's insanity.
Yeah, and you get those moments, and it's like, sometimes, I don't know, like, I heard there's two ways to write a joke, like, you could sit there in your house and you could start thinking about stuff, and, some comics really excel at that, just, going to Starbucks with their laptop and they just write, Personally, I'm more where it's like, I have to go out, I have to experience life and get into some situations that might be funny later. Or, I'm with my boys and something funny happens. And, like, I like to set my friends up where they could have the big joke, because I know I could steal it and use it in front of a crowd. They're not
right.
they're not gonna profit off the joke. So it's like, I could use, I like to experience life, and that's where my material comes from.
Well, I wanted to ask about your creative process. Most guys, I mean, I heard Carlin did Post-its on the wall. I've heard different things. How did your process differ? I mean, does it all go in your head, or do you have to stop and keep a notebook and write down little things? Like, how, walk us through a bit of your process. I mean, without giving away too much, obviously, but.
Well, it's not really like a secret,
Okay.
like if something happens to me, I'll write a quick note in my phone, and then I'll revisit it later when I have some more time because, I like to be in the moment. I don't like to, keep my face into my phone while I'm hanging out with everybody.
Right.
Sometimes I walk around with a voice recorder. I always keep a pen on me because, like, I'm a traditional writer where I like to write things on pen and paper.
Right.
And it's like, you write like key words, like say, like you hear something funny, what was I talking about? Oh, I got a note in my phone because I was talking to my friend the other day, and we were talking about sound effects, and I had this ex-girlfriend, and we were talking about rim shots and how much. Most people say, like, when you're doing a sound effect for a rim shot, you go ba-dum
Right.
or like a ba-dum bump.
Right.
I've heard it like both ways. My ex-girlfriend used to go and
Like
it
a
was like,
gunfire.
yeah, and it was like, completely wrong. And
Right.
it's like that, like, I wrote in my phone, like I just wrote like ex-girlfriend sound effects, and it's like I could think about that later and then maybe, try to turn it into a bit or see where it fits in my present act. But a lot of times I just write things down. I have a giant notebook with like just different little punchlines or keywords because I don't like to throw things out. Because a comedian told me, I forgot who, when I was first starting, and they said never throw anything out because it's probably funny. You just might not be a good enough comedian to tell it yet.
Well played.
Yeah, and it was kind of like a dick comment at first, but it was also really good advice because it's like sometimes, like you write a piece of gold and you just don't have like the whole setup and the premise behind it, and it's like, you just keep it in the notebook and then you write the other part, and then it's like, oh shit, I could mix this with this, and then you're drafting it all out, and now you got a 5-minute bit.
Well, now, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, you being a writer. You have your blog, Hugh Daniel Murray IV.com or Hugh Daniel Murray IV.com.
Yeah.
And you've been doing a lot of great content on there. And the thing with this is, do you feel that the blog writing is more therapeutic? Because do you feel sometimes it's sensory overload, just having so much material? You figure, let me distribute and throw some on paper, or do you just figure that writing keeps you sharper?
It's a little of both. I like to blog. I was.
Oh, Hugh, I think you cut off. Hold on a second.
But I was doing sports blogging for about a year before I started stand-up. So I was actually a writer first, and I used blogging as an outlet to kind of let the creative process flow. Like, all right, I'm just going to sit down and write about a topic and see what comes out of me. And, it was sports blogging for, I would say, about 2-3 years. And then I just ended up getting so busy with my old day job and the stand up that I kind of let it go. And then I was kind of looking like, there's tons of sports blogs and movie blogs and gadget blogs, and I was trying to think like, what do I don't really read? Like, what is my sense of humor? Like, where can I add this to like a blogging field? And I found relationships, like I like to write about male female dynamics now, and like, because it is a saturated market, but I feel like people don't have that, like we were talking, like Vince Mancini of Film Drunk or Matt Offord, like with the sports blogging. Like, I feel like I got a similar sense of humor to them, and you don't really have that type of writer in the relationship area. You just get like the Elite Daily or like BuzzFeed and that hacky, like, which 90s character are you type writing. And I'm just like, all right, maybe there's a market for this, and the blog actually started doing well.
Nice. One thing with that's funny. When you touch on the subject of relationships, it's funny because you always bring a portion of your your personal experience to it, which again allows for that personal connection. Did you feel comfortable? I mean, you do it already on stage, just opening up in terms of just on a pretty much on a traceable medium. Because, you could do stand-up, somebody hears your set, and that's it, and people can always tell your story, but then it becomes like a game of telephone, and it changes, versus putting your thoughts to page, and then, there's stuff there that you can trace it back, years later.
Yeah, I was definitely nervous about that because, I'm talking about specific people,
right?
And then I'm posting it to Facebook, and those specific people are still my Facebook friends. So that, and then if all of a sudden I had tons of girls, I wrote this blog as advice for men in relationships,
right?
And it actually morphed more into I had such a female readership on the blog because I guess guys just aren't interested in reading about relationships, and I think most of them were looking to see if I mentioned them.
That's pretty funny.
And I had to kind of be careful, and I did have some conversations where they're like, why are you talking about me in this blog? And it's I didn't mention your name,
right?
No one knows that I'm talking about you except for you. You can't get mad at that. I'm just sharing my feelings on this topic because maybe you didn't want to hear them in the past, or you didn't let me get a word in when we actually did talk. So I've had those conversations, and it gets I was nervous about it, but it ended up working out, and I think I've been doing it so long now that people kind of just let me have it.
Well, one of your posts that really got me wanting to discuss this was the one you wrote in, I think it was in January, Nice Guys Don't Finish. It jumped out, obviously, because sarcastic Gene Wilder being the picture was a get for that post. But it's funny because I read that post and I said, you know what, it's real interesting because I know a lot of guys that they'll always be like, yo man, I'm trying to talk to this chick, but she always likes scumbags and whatever, and my answer to those guys that I'm friends with is always, well, then you need to become a scumbag, step your game up.
Yeah.
And then you need to be that guy. So it's funny because when I saw that, it was a really great way to do relationship advice without making it a bro column. Because sometimes a lot of these guys, they do the relationship thing, they do the health thing or whatever, and they try to do when they talk about bodybuilding and stuff and weightlifting, I always talk about bro science, where it's always, this, you got to do this and this. You don't go on your blog telling people I'm an expert in this shit. I'm just telling you, hey, real world applications of stuff that may happen to everybody else.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm trying to get through. It's you get people on these blogs telling you they're a sexpert, or they study this at college, or they're a professor, and it's I'm just writing about personal experience and what I've dealt with and what I see out there, and the whole point of the post was you don't have to become a scumbag. You just gotta step up your game, is because they're not looking for girls aren't looking for a scumbag.
Nope.
And if how many times have you heard a girl say, "Yeah, I want a guy that treats me like shit. I want him to cheat on me a lot."
Well, I have an answer for that. I worked with a girl, obviously name redacted, and she said that she likes dating guys with something wrong with them. She specifically said that. She cited that. And it was funny because she goes, yeah, I like dating guys with something wrong with them. And I go, all right, well, what do you bring to the table? I'm like, I told her, you don't know how to cook and you can't clean. So you want a guy that has something wrong with him. I'm like, what if that something wrong with him is you? And she was just like, what are you talking about? So, it kind of went into the whole, I don't like to cook. She goes, I like to clean, but I don't like to cook. I'm like, why don't you like to cook? And she was like, oh, well, I don't like dealing with the meat. And I said, but your man comes home and you deal with his meat, because think about it. We're outside. We're men. We're pieces of shit. We sweat, all this stuff. Then you come home and your girl's in the mood. It's like you didn't shower. You didn't do what you got to do. All of a sudden, you're just as gross as what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just got taken aback by that, especially, when I read that article. your line of if you're nice, be nice, don't change your game or pander. And it's funny because in that moment when she said that, it validated exactly that. It's like, you know what, some poor guy that's probably instantly nice to you has zero shot in the world because he doesn't pander.
Yeah.
But the guy that has something wrong with him is automatically enamored by the fact that, you might be a passable 7, and that's going to be the end all be all.
Yeah. And these guys get stuck on like, well, I'm a nice guy. It's like, yeah, be a nice guy, but it's like you're also unemployed, you're depressed all the time,
yep.
and you're overweight. Like, they're not disliking you because you're a nice guy. It's because you have nothing to bring to the table.
Exactly, and it's always a give and take. I mean, my wife, I always tell her, the running gag I always have is a theory that, and a couple of comedians have touched on it too, where they all say all women secretly hate each other. And
yeah.
and I always say it, and the minute that it's said, and I tell female friends this too, and they go, yeah, that's bullshit. And the minute they come and they say, oh yeah, so-and-so, a man broke up with her and she's got to hit him for alimony. I said, all women secretly hate each other. And they get so mad because they're like, what are you talking about? Like, you're putting this chick's business out there. I don't know this chick. Like it's weird because the way that you're approaching relationships is exactly the way that people need to be approached, because too many people get hit with pillows instead of getting hit with hammers.
Yeah.
You got to get hit with hammers some days.
Yeah, you need to have that punch in the face sometimes, like you need, like, it's like, I don't know, it's like, I just want to scream at some people, like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you, like, people get wrapped up in this whole self-loathing, and it's like, people don't realize that the key to relationships is confidence on both sides.
Yep.
And like your friend you were talking about, she likes guys that are something wrong with them because ultimately she's trying to save someone, and she's trying to almost like make herself, like on fire. Like when you get at a job and you make it so they can't fire you. People are trying to, she's trying to do that in a relationship. Like
she did that. With a kid.
Exactly.
There's your answer.
That's way. Yeah, that's the worst STD you could get.
There you go. Or the one that I picked up, I always like to use fuck trophies.
Trophy.
That's it. Play the game for 9 months and you get rewarded with a trophy. There it is.
Exactly, an alimony.
So the approach is legitimate, and I like that it adds another creative outlet to you. I think it's a great way that you're meshing your blog with your off blog content. I think you're doing a great job with that, and that actually is going to bring me into the next thing, which is just marketing as a comedian nowadays. We've come such a long way. Stand-up comics used to rely on MySpace a lot. How do you feel about just the social media presence as a comedian? And do you feel that it's both a gift and a curse, or do you think that it's a better way to get noticed because you can test out material on a broader scale?
You definitely get some some Facebook and Twitter comedians, these people that are just doing it to get fave star likes or just likes on their Facebook profile, and it's hard to like separate who is actually doing it to get to the next level. But I mean, a lot of agents and companies and network execs, like from what I hear, I mean, I haven't personally had too many run-ins with them, but that like one of their first questions is, how many Twitter followers do you have?
Really?
how many people is your content going to reach?
Holy shit.
And they're because it's a different game now, and we're living in a comedy world where Louis C.K. and Patton Oswalt, Jim Gaffigan, Aziz Ansari, all these guys, they went out and they said, "Fuck you, Comedy Central. Don't even call me HBO, Showtime. I'm gonna produce my own special, release it on my website, and I'm gonna make $1 million off of it."
And that's good and bad, right? I mean, it's great from a monetary standpoint, but it's also bad because you're taking it away from big business.
Yeah. But it like I swear Louis C.K. changed the game because he did that live at the Beacon Theater. He charged $5 on his website,
Yep.
and I think his budget was like 200 or 500 grand, and he ended up making like $1 million or 2 million on top of that. And I think it was like 6 months to a year after he had a gigantic HBO special. It's like when we kind of took the power back as comedians, where we didn't have to, like he had that bargaining room where he could be like, listen, I don't need you.
Right.
Like you got to pay me more if you want this because I'm going to make you money and I want to make money. You can't take 90% of the profits just because people are going to see it, because now we have social media and I got, 5 million Twitter followers and I got 100,000 people coming to my website every day. And that's kind of what I'm like, on a much smaller scale because, I'm not Louis C.K., but, I'm trying with this Get Involved comedy I'm trying to get a network of comedians to mesh together and work together and get like a brand out there, like, kind of like starting my own Funny or Die or, like College Humor, where these people are, College Humor is like putting out their own movies now.
That's right.
And Funny or Die, and like they're having these contests, and these videos are getting millions of hits. And, there's this comedian, Long Island guy named Vic DiBattista. Have you ever heard of him?
Him, I haven't heard of.
Oh, yeah. He came out with this video called Milk and Bread. And it's
Okay.
it's a 30-second video of him running around going, gotta get the milk, gotta get the bread, right before a snowstorm.
Oh, Jesus.
And he made I think it was like $50,000 off that video just from YouTube alone, because it got like 8 million hits.
Oh my God, that's insane.
Yeah, and now like he's a draw at comedy clubs, and he's getting all this, like publicity, and people are coming to his shows, and it just turned it turned his career. He's always been a headliner, but now he's like a draw. He was getting weekends canceled because no one was coming to see him, and now he's selling out. 5 shows.
That's crazy. Well, I'm glad you brought up Get Involved comedy, because I think we need just more of that. I think collectively, a lot of comics, they go out on the road and it's almost like throw shit at a wall and see what sticks. And we've moved beyond that because there's so many more mediums now: Facebook, Twitter, Vine, Snapchat, you name it. And what comedians are doing is they're diversifying so much that they're really just spreading themselves so thin. But by you collectively bringing a brand together, it allows everything to be localized under one identity, which is great.
Yes, and the issue I'm currently having with it is because I grabbed a bunch of my friends, and we have some great comics on there. And like we have Kevin Bartini, he's the warm-up comic for The Daily Show and The Colbert Report.
Wow.
And we got like this great headliner, Tom DiDario, that just headlined our show at the brokerage. And the show at the brokerage that we put together did so well that Governors owns the brokerage, and their other club, McGuire's. They reached out to us and asked us if we wanted to put together another show, and they booked Tom for a headlining weekend in July. So that show, they weren't using Tom, and now they're headlining Tom for a weekend. So like things are starting to come together on like the comedy show front. But I was grabbing most of these people because they had some sort of value. They either booked comedy shows or, we were hoping that people were going to put together content, blogs and podcasts and viral videos. And I really just haven't been having that. And I think people kind of just took this idea as like, oh, hey, Hugh and Mike Keegan are going to put together comedy shows. If I get involved, I'll be on those comedy shows. And I'm trying to make it so much more than just producing the once a month comedy show on Long Island, because no one's career is getting made from that.
Right.
But if someone comes out with a viral video that gets 8 million hits, all of a sudden the spillover traffic onto everybody else's profile is gonna help everybody.
Absolutely. That's the only way to be. I mean, again, we're so inundated with so many outlets that by you creating something so localized, it's like, hey, you do a viral video, you put it on there, it comes from Get Involved Comedy, everybody sees it and everybody gravitates towards that one brand, and then that one brand, their job is to make sure that they can sell that brand but also sell themselves at the same time.
Exactly. And I'm trying to handle, most of the social networking and the marketing for a lot of people, the promotion, and I'm kind of taking care of that aspect. And my partner, Mike Keegan, we're the co-founders. He is kind of booking the comedy shows and we both have say in what goes on, but, I'm more a little tech savvy and, we kind of split up the division of labor, and it's been working real well. We're just hoping to, that if we handle all the social networking and marketing, that all the comics that we have won't have to, and it'll in turn let them come up with the content. And it right now it's kind of shitty because me handling all the marketing is hindering me coming up with my own content. And these people not coming up with the content, now I'm not doing what I should be doing because I'm trying to promote everybody, so I'm kind of at a stalemate with it, but I feel like if everyone bought into it, it would work, Well,
I think there's a couple of ideas, and I think, once we wrap up, I'll share some with you. Maybe it'll help make your process a little easier.
Yeah, that would be great, man. I'm always looking for, people that could help me in like the business aspect of it, because, I get some people, and we've actually turned down a bunch of people that have asked us to get involved because I'm asking them like, well, what do you do? Like, what do you do other than comedy? And they're like, well, I book a show at a bar in the village and I do stand-up comedy. I get on stage like 4 times a month. And I'm like, yo, I got the stand-up comedy. Don't worry about it.
It's like, what else are you bringing to the table besides comedy? Because people forget, and I tell people this just from, kind of running my own business on the side. It's people don't realize that it's a lot of moving parts. There's the website, there's the website side. There's the social media side. There's the email list side. There's just getting out there and spreading the word. There's promotional materials if you got to put them together. There's so many moving parts that I can understand where you're coming from with regards to burnout, because that's what happens. It's like you start putting all your eggs in one basket, that creatively, by the time it's time for you to work on your own material, and you can agree with this, you get to the point where it's like, fuck, I don't feel like writing shit. I just want to go to bed. Exactly.
That's exactly where I'm at, where I'm kind of burning myself out doing, all the logistics of it, that I'm not, I've been, you probably have saw when you checked out my website that I barely been putting up blogs.
Yep.
And it's like, it's kind of hurting my writing process, and, between the stand-up shows and trying to get this business off the ground, it's hurting my creative process, but, I was hoping everybody else would pick up the slack, but, Mike and I have been talking about trimming the fat,
Absolutely.
And we're going to try to get some, I think I just got to pitch the idea and push it a little harder on the people, because people buy in, but then they're telling me like, oh, I'm busy with my day job. It's like, well, do you want to be a comedian, or do you want to fucking wash cars all day?
That's exactly it. That's where reality has to, you got to kind of either take it's the shit or get off the pot, because what you're saying, it's like, dude, I'm offering you a gift wrap dream. You just got to do X. And X might be 10% of the entire process, but that 10% is 10% less shit you got to do.
Exactly. That's exactly it, dude. You get it. I wish you were part of this.
Well, like I said, I'm going to try and share some stuff with you. It's all about, paying it forward. So hopefully what I can pass on to you can work.
Yeah, man.
I wanted to kind of go in another direction. You had mentioned, and we had kind of talked a little bit about it on an email you sent. You wanted to talk about the IamNotAnonymous.org. Very, we've been doing a lot of shits and giggles, a lot of laughs, but now, we kind of get into some more serious territory, and your involvement with that, before I even have you get into it, I just got to say, dude, you got my utmost respect, because it's a ballsy thing.
Yeah.
So,
thank you.
just share a little bit about your work with I'mNotAnonymous.org.
Well, it was put together by my friend Tom and his girlfriend Kate. And Tom is an addict, and Kate is the photographer, and she's the one who launched the website and everything. And I was kind of sold on the idea because I willingly admit that I'm in recovery. I've had addiction issues since like 2008. When I got my jaw broken in a bar fight.
Wow.
And I got, it was over a girl, obviously. And
always is.
Yeah. So I got hooked on painkillers, and I did the normal opiate progression from Vicodin all the way to shooting heroin.
Damn.
Yeah. So it got out of control, and it's an epidemic on Long Island.
Yep.
They're starting task forces, and there's arrests every day, and there's just people overdosing, and a lot of my friends are just fucking dying, man. And I finally got it this time around. So 8 months clean at this point.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I started. I met this guy Tom in Narcotics Anonymous, and I heard about this project that he was doing, and it's basically to end the stigma of addiction. Like people don't want to come out and say that they were an addict because all of a sudden you're going to get looked at like a piece of shit.
Which isn't the case, because it takes more balls to admit that than to hide it. It's easy to hide anything. Yeah.
And that's part of recovery is becoming honest with yourself and everybody around you. And I think, I know that their mission is kind of, listen, we're going to have a place where here are some people that are clean, they're getting their life together, you could have this too, contact us and we could help you out. It's because I think a lot of people just don't know what, like, they get wrapped up in the grips of addiction,
right?
Whether it's from shitty life circumstances, like my addiction started from an injury, and I know tons of people that have had similar things. Like, say you blow out your knee in a football game, all of a sudden you start taking Vicodin, and then the doctors cut you off, and now you're trying to score heroin on the streets. Like that's so many people's stories these days, and all the dirty doctors that were out there that were just prescribing people 120 oxys a month. Like, that's just too much. And and all the doctors went to jail, and it's just an epidemic. And I'm just trying to, like, I put my name out there because I was thrown into recovery and everything was public. My
right.
DWI was on page 7 of the New York Post.
No way.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And, it said Long Island comic arrested DWI. The Post even came up with stupid headlines because I got caught with a taser.
Oh, shit.
I had a taser in my car, so it said, and it looked like a cell phone. So they said Comic's cell phone had an illegal zing tone.
Oh, Jesus.
So the Post even gave me a hacky headline, and everybody knew I had a problem. I was probably the last one to know that I had a problem. So it's like, why should I hide and be ashamed of this and, try to be the anonymous part of Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous? It's like, when I could get my name out there and kind of be like the face of recovery.
Well, I think, it's a crazy thing, because with regards to addiction, I think that you reach that point where some people, they need, the hard wake-up call. I mean, it took the hard wake-up call for you, but the thing that gets me is you brought up the whole thing about doctors on the island. I remember, I'd like to say about 3 months ago, they were talking about, they busted a guy on the island, a doctor, that he was just cranking out prescription meds to, high school students and the work. So, it definitely is an ongoing problem, and it's something that nobody talks about, because people talk about, and this is crazy to say, they talk about, designer drug use. Like, everybody wants to talk about meth because of Breaking Bad, or everybody wants to talk about coke, or everybody is on the weed kick. But
Yeah.
people don't realize that everything else, those are what I like to call the 5 o'clock news drugs. It's
Yeah.
it's everything else that's kind of underlying that gets people into this habit. So like in your case, you came off an injury, you went through that, and then the cycle just escalated. People never talk about that. So that right there is huge, that you're willing to go that level, because nobody addresses that elephant in the room.
Yeah. And you know what? You get that, like that. Well, first of all, meth is like not big in New York State.
Nope.
Like I've experimented with almost every type of drug in my years, and they're saying if meth hits New York the way crack did in the 80s, it's gonna level the city.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's what they're saying. It's gonna be crazy. And what's going on is right now we have the heroin epidemic.
Yep.
And these people are, it's starting with dirty doctors and, people with harmless injuries. And, it wasn't a big deal, and you know what you get? You get a lot of people in nursing homes that are addicted to this stuff.
Yep.
And I know personally, I was trying to score the painkillers, and then all the doctors got arrested, and they changed all the laws for pharmacies. And all that was out there was heroin. And now I got a physical addiction. Like, heroin is different from crack, where your body needs it and you get sick, and then you get the fear of the sickness, which is even worse than the sickness itself. And you're just looking for anything. So if someone tells you, hey, try this, it's cheaper, and usually you're broke at this point. So it's like, it's cheaper and you'll stop fucking shitting yourself. You're going to try it.
Right.
Like it's, so then you try it. And then when that's the only thing available, now you're hooked on that. And that's like, the difference between, like, a lot of people will have a heroin addiction and they'll come out and say, I'm addicted to painkillers.
Right.
And that's what they like, that's their way of, like, hiding, and it's the same fucking thing is what I'm saying.
Well, you being part of this organization, do you also do you do sober companionship? How do you approach that with regards now to you being not exposed, but just a public advocate? How do you interact with those that are still anonymous? How do you approach it?
I still go to my meetings, to, like, for instance, today I spoke at NUMC, National Medical Center's rehab. Once in a while, like, I actually work with a bunch of comics in recovery, and we try to bring comedy shows to rehab facilities and sober houses. And, we try to, one company's called Recover the Laughter, and then there's Recovery to Go. And, I try to do that as, like, a comic. You're not really supposed to, like, promote Narcotics Anonymous. Like, they got all their own rules and stuff like that. And I think that's what the I Am Not Anonymous is really trying to do, is they're trying to reach out to people where Narcotics Anonymous can't.
Right. I mean, that's one thing where people that are in recovery can cite a person that's used or is in recovery by whatever giveaways they may have, physical or psychological, whatever tick they give away, instantly, like, listen, man, like, I know what it's like. Do you run into that a lot, especially given, your more keen observational sense, or is it something where you approach it based on kind of the rule book laid out before you?
Well, I mean, every situation's kind of different. Like, like, it depends what you're doing. Like, if I'm a representative of Narcotics Anonymous, I got to follow their rules, because you can't put them in jeopardy, whether it's their meeting or, them as a whole. Like, I use the example, like Johnny Depp or, any major celebrity, Barack Obama, whoever, can't just be like, I go to Alcoholics Anonymous, because say they get into a car accident and kill somebody, it's gonna make Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous look like it doesn't work.
Interesting.
When really it just didn't work for that person.
Right.
You know, so you're kind of endangering them as a whole. That's why I'm not really supposed to talk that I'm in Narcotics Anonymous. You know, I do it because I don't really believe in that, and who the fuck am I? You know,
right.
like if people are really basing their life and recovery on me, they're not doing it right. You know, because
No.
everybody's supposed to be, it's supposed to be very personal. You know, everybody recovers differently, and you know, but as like, if I'm going, you know, if I'm talking to somebody and, you know, they're going to have different resentments and different issues with the program, or, you know, like sometimes people just haven't been hurt enough by the drug.
Right.
You know?
They haven't experienced it. I mean, you know, when you sent this to me, it resonated. My, you know, my mom, she was a career foster parent. So when you know, before she passed, she took care of a lot of kids, and we get a lot of kids that, you know, came from parents that were hardcore drug users. So, you know, you see these kids and you're like, man, you know, it's crazy. You know, these kids end up developmentally disabled, et cetera, and it becomes a crazy eye opener. So when you try to approach people, what you just said is 100% true. People don't understand the severity of it because it hasn't hammered them enough yet.
Yes, and that's exactly it. Is
they don't see the
like,
repercussions.
You know, and it's all a personal. They call it rock bottom. You know, hitting rock bottom, and everybody's bottom is different. You know, like I've had some overdoses and arrests, and you know, I've had all, you know, hurt my family and my friends, and you know, drained bank accounts. It went into debt. And it wasn't until that last overdose where I really hit that bottom, you know. Like for some people, you know, it's losing their kids or going to jail, or, you know, like everybody's bottom is going to be different. I know some people in the rooms that are in there for smoking marijuana, and that's it. Just weed is their drug. You know, that's their drug of choice, and they've hit a bottom because of marijuana. And it's all personal. Like you know, you're not supposed to compare stories. You're just supposed to identify with the feelings behind them. And you know, you can't really, like, I can't judge somebody like because they've never smoked crack, or they've never shot heroin, or they've never done acid. Like, you can't just start judging people based off of that, because who knows? Like, they could have taken a Xanax, got into a car accident, and killed somebody. Just because they didn't shoot dope for 5 years doesn't mean I was a better drug addict or I need it more. You know, like, everybody has like that moment where it's like, damn, I need to get clean. And sometimes, you know, it just wasn't enough for them. You know, there's some people that overdose and come out of the hospital and use, you know, like, and for them, they just weren't hurt enough, or they didn't believe that they were going to die, you know, or, you know, some people go to jail for a month and then they come out and go cop, you know, like it's, you know, maybe they needed to go to jail for fucking 5 years, you know, and like everybody has a different moment. And, you know, you kind of got to know that when talking to addicts, because some people, you know, if you go to a detox, like I've done comedy in a detox, and there are just people in there that are, you know, sometimes you just get homeless people trying to find a warm place to go.
Right.
You know, sometimes you just get people trying to dodge the cops. You get people just trying to get healthy so they could go back out and use again. You know, there's different people are in there for different reasons, and people are going to be in the rooms for different reasons, and you know, people are going to talk to you, and you gotta know that you almost got to keep them at arm's length, like, until you know they're serious about it.
Right. I mean, that's one of those things where you're extending the olive branch, but sometimes that person may be the gateway to go back into a problem.
Yeah, and that's a big one, is like finding a girlfriend, or, you know, hooking up with people like that are also in recovery, because a lot of times those people will just end up getting high together.
Well, I wanted to also touch on this. I know you had mentioned, people that were in there smoking weed, and I wanted to kind of talk about, where do you stand with like people have romanticized weed? Like where do you sit with regards to that? I'm just curious, not only just because of what you've shared with us, but just as a comic, do you feel that there's an over reliance on just that being the norm now, like that being the culture?
Yeah, like I think people don't take weed that seriously, and I was actually been trying to like write like a blog about it. Is that by people making weed legal and like the medical marijuana and like you could buy it in Colorado now on the streets and all that, you're kind of going back on years and years of saying this is bad, don't do this.
Right.
And like you're kind of confusing kids.
Yep.
And now like you just spent 20 years telling kids to beware of drugs, but alcohol's okay when you're 21.
Yep.
And now you're you're gonna do this with weed, and it's like, are you gonna do it with coke next?
Yeah.
Like what's next? What are you gonna legalize next? Like is morphine okay? On the streets, or heroin or meth? Like you can't just keep confusing people. But then people are like, I hear people in recovery that are saying like, well, weed's gonna be legal soon. It's like, yeah, but it still could screw up your life.
That's right.
Like alcohol's legal.
Yep, alcohol's legal, and it's like that doesn't mean that you should get lit before you go to work.
Exactly. and people don't realize that jobs are still going to drug test.
Yep.
So if you go smoke weed on the first of the month and you're a truck driver and you get drug tested on the last day of the month, you're going to get fired.
That's it.
Like it's just because it's legal now doesn't mean you can abuse it, or given your situation in life can even use it. Like that it's still a drug and it's a controlled substance, and you're gonna have to use it responsibly. And I think just so many people talk about how safe it is and how no one's ever died off of it, and all of that, and I take it for what it's worth. But then I've also seen the other side of it, where like I've seen people that their lives were ruined because of it. I knew a guy that hid his pot smoking from his wife, and he would steal from the register at the movie theater that he worked at every year, or every day, or every week, whatever. And for years, the movie theater just let him hang himself, and he ended up stealing $15,000 and going to jail for grand larceny because he was stealing to get pot money, because his wife checked the bank account.
That's insane.
So now that's a life ruin because of marijuana. Like obviously there are tons of people who can handle it, but there are still people who can't. It's like anything. Normal people can go out and have one or two drinks, and that's it. There are people who can't. There are people who can't handle gambling and and sex and overeating, and they have anonymous rooms for all of that. And it's there's different things. Like it's different strokes for different folks, I guess.
No, I mean it's crazy because I don't drink or any of that. I kind of fall under the straight edge moniker, and I never ever tell pontificate. Oh, you shouldn't do whatever the fuck you want. You want to get lit, you want to get blasted. That's great. Do whatever you got to do. Just don't fuck up my vibe. Like don't be out with me and then get fucked up and then you get into a fight and I gotta make sure you don't get killed. Because that's what ends up happening. So it's interesting to just hear a different spin on it, because everybody views things differently. But you're probably one of the first people in a while I've spoken to that looks at it from a more objective angle, where it's like, listen, all this shit down the road will catch up in some shape, way, or form. So either you're responsible or you're not. Some people just, it's like, some people shouldn't have pets. It's like the same thing. Some people shouldn't toke up, or some people shouldn't, take acid, or whatever the case may be. It's like some shit just isn't for everybody.
Yeah, some people just can't handle it, and it's just like the same thing. Like there are people out there that get Vicodin prescriptions because they got their teeth pulled, and they won't take it because they don't like how it makes them feel.
Right.
And those people are fucking weird to me. Like it's different. Like I'll take 10 of those things for a toothache and just chill out. Like that.
Right.
That was my thing, and. Like it's just with everything. Like, I guess moderation is the key, but then there are just people who can't handle moderation.
Yep. Some people over moderate. The other thing is exactly that. It's moderation dependent on the person. Like, I can go to Buffalo Wild Wings and eat 20 chicken wings. That's my moderation. That doesn't mean that you should go and eat 20 of them too.
Exactly.
My moderation isn't your moderation.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. There's, some people can drink 10 cups of coffee a day. Other people, they'll have a heart attack.
That's it.
And this is all legal stuff that's not frowned upon, and I think weed kind of crossed that barrier into more like alcohol where it's like socially acceptable.
Right.
Like if you tell people like, oh yeah, I'm buzzed, I drank a couple beers, or I smoked a joint before I came out, no one's going to look at you like you have 6 heads. But if someone walked in on me and I had a needle in my arm, people are going to start thinking things.
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, I personally, when I hear that, and I see people talking about, drinking and weed and all that being in the same category, I always say the same thing. It's like, yeah, people talk about cigarettes being illegal, but cigarettes don't alter your perception.
Yeah.
People when they talk about weed and about, it doesn't kill anybody. Yeah, but it still alters what you are for a limited amount of time. It's when I talk about MMA on air, we talk about, the guys talking about that weed isn't a performance enhancer. I don't think it is, but I also don't think, hey, that you're not gonna feel a punch to the face if you're high, because again, it changes the perception. Yeah, it's not enhancing you as an athlete. Don't misunderstand. But if you smoke up, go to the gym, you're hitting the heavy bag, and then you're sparring, and somebody punches you in the face, you're not gonna have the same reaction time versus when you're regular.
Exactly.
Nobody gets that.
And a big thing that people don't get with weed is until it's legalized in all 50 states, it's an illegal drug.
Yep.
So if you're Nick Diaz or Nate Diaz and you're failing drug tests for weed, it's an illegal drug.
Yep.
and this is a job that you work, and if they drug test you and you fail, you could get in trouble.
That's it.
You're breaking the law. And until it's legal all over, you can't do that. And then if the UFC or the NFL, like, they still want to have it against, to drug test for it and say you can't use it, you can't use it because it's a private company that you work for. That's it.
You're an employee, and that's the bottom line. But it's funny because, like I said, just talking about it like this, nobody views it the same way. Everybody's like, yeah, man, but I don't understand. It's like, yeah, that's right, but you're not going to react the same. Yeah, it's not a performance enhancer. Absolutely not. Not a performance enhancer in the least, but that doesn't mean that you should smoke up, get punched in the face. What if you get beaten to a coma and forget to tap out?
Yes.
Because you don't feel the pain as much. And then you got brain damage. Oh, but it's okay then.
Yeah, it's like the cortisone shots in football.
Yep.
Like you say you hurt your leg worse. Like you're not supposed to use that stuff, and you're not supposed to change your normal chemistry of your body, because if something goes wrong, like, what now?
That's correct. You're 100% right.
Like I was actually just reading an article on Kale Sonnen that failed. I guess he failed a random drug test for some steroids or something.
Well, what ended up happening with him, it was funny because this got blown up. What happened was they cut off TRT exemptions for all these guys. So all these guys that may or may not have juiced, that were getting exemptions because they had low testosterone, they had to stop using testosterone replacement therapy. So Chael, he was like, yeah, I was using TRT. They told me I can't use TRT no more. So the doctor said I got to use X and Y in order to level out. And whatever, the doctor, he may have the medical proof, and that's great. but he fucked up because he didn't tell them, hey, I'm on this. So it didn't do him any favors. A lot of these guys that have low testosterone, I think he was saying that he has like one testicle. So that's part of why he has low test. Whether that's true or not, whatever. Nobody's going to tell him to whip his bag out. But the fact is, you know, he may or may not have a legitimate reason, but you didn't go, like you were saying before, through the proper channels, and now you're fucked.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you got when you're doing stuff like that, you know, like there's people that I've seen that are like, oh, I dislocated my shoulder, so I took some Vicodin. It's like, well, did you get a prescription for that? No. You know, it's like, well, you're still breaking the law and taking illegal drugs. Yep. I know that's what a doctor would have given you, but he didn't give it to you.
Yep.
You know, you got to go through the proper channels. And, you know, what was funny is, you know, since we're talking about all the recovery stuff, is I was actually having a conversation with somebody because Alcoholics Anonymous and NA, they don't have any literature based on steroids.
Oh,
so it's like a big gray area that are steroids a relapse, or are you still clean and sober if you take steroids? And my argument is, have you ever tried to take steroids away from someone?
Right.
You know, watch how mad they get.
Well, besides the fact that if you're a guy, you know, that administers drugs via syringe and you're using steroids and administering them via syringe, what's stopping that person from separating one into the other?
Exactly.
Just because you got a bottle of ketchup doesn't mean you have to always fill it with ketchup.
Yes. And and you know, like I just think it was funny because, like, I compared it, you know, get a crackhead, take away his crack, watch what happens.
Yep.
Get a roid user and try to take away his steroids, and you're gonna get a very similar reaction.
Oh yeah, the weaning off of steroids, because, you know, I've known a fair share of guys that juiced. It's exactly that. Damn, dude, I feel smaller. It's like the guy, you're like 300 pounds, you know, and the guy looks the same, but he's man, I feel small. It's like, okay, yeah, you know, you're all right.
It's a mood and mind altering drug.
Absolutely. Yep. But you know, I really want to get into that. I really wanted to get into that, and I'm glad, you know, you shared it with us, because it's such a refreshing take on it that it needed to be shared, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I talk about it in my act, you know, and I like, you know, being in recovery, because I like when people reach out to me and you know, like, are saying, like, I need help, because I'll try to help you, but, you know, I'm only going to go so far, because you got to know that people are serious, you know, like, right. and it's hard to, like, you know, it's a stupid analogy, but I'm going to use it anyway. It's like getting, you know, too fond of a Game of Thrones character.
No, it's true. I mean, you know, nobody prepares for that.
Yeah, and it's like, say I put I spend night and day trying to get this person clean, and they're just not getting it. I'm going to get pissed off at myself. I could end up just wasting my time because you haven't experienced enough pain to get through it. So, like, I'll usually give my phone number out, or I'll tell you where a good meeting is, but I'm not gonna pick you up and drag you there. Nope. You know, you gotta want it.
I agree. You know, I like the approach. I like the unfiltered commentary that, you know, like I said, you could share with us. Hopefully, you know, if there's anybody out there that's dealing with any of that, you can, you know, serve as some inspiration as well.
Yeah, they could absolutely hit me up. I'll have no problems trying to, you know, especially since this I'm Not Anonymous thing. I've been getting hit up randomly. They've been emailing me, or, you know, contacting me through my website, and they've been, you know, reaching out and saying, like, hey, man, I really appreciate what you did. Your words touched me, or, you know, I need help. What can I do? And, you know, I've been trying to find different avenues for those people to get help.
No, I think it's a like I said, you're doing the right thing, and again, it goes back to paying it forward, man. So again, you have my utmost respect for that, dude.
Absolutely, and that was a good movie.
Just to bring it home, you got a couple of gigs coming up. You got a Get Involved show the 19th, and then you're going to be involved with Boy I Gotcha Comedy in Jersey. So let people know a little bit about the 619 event and the 626 event.
Yeah, the 619 event, that's at this. It's going to be on Long Island in St. James. It's going to be well, we had another venue that apparently is closing down, so it's going to be officially the second Get Involved produced show. We actually have that guy that I mentioned, Kevin Bartini. He's the warm-up comic for The Daily Show and The Colbert Report. I've never personally seen him live. I've seen his YouTube stuff, but from what I've heard, he's electric. So that's going to be a good show. Me and my boy Mike Keegan are on it, and we got Long Island, one of Long Island's favorite, Anthony DiDomenico. He's going to be on it. He's a regular at all the governors clubs, and it should be fun. It's this it's like this sushi fusion place. There's going to be some drink specials, and it's a really cool place. Our friend is the manager there, and he contacted us about running a show. As for the 626, that's going to be in Jersey at the Southern Comfort Café. It's with this lady, Yolanda Mack. She has Ms. Mack Marketing, and she is phenomenal. I did a comedy contest with them last month, and I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I ended up losing the contest, but she brought me back this month for a paid spot where I'm going to do a lot more time, and I'm not involved with the contest. But last month, she ended up getting signed by Wu-Tang Management.
Wow.
Yeah, so Jimmy Mack of Wu-Tang Management was there, and he ended up signing her as their publicist.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so Wu-Tang was in the house. They had the guitarist from Kenny Loggins was there. He was one of the judges for the contest. So I was pissed because there was 4 judges, and the guitarist from Kenny Loggins was the only white judge, and he gave me the thumbs down. And I was I was the only white guy in the bill. I was like, come on, man.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but Wu-Tang loved me.
That's awesome, man. A little reverse racism.
Yeah,
it goes a long way.
Yeah, so it was a fun show. I was joking around. I said I was like the milk and the coffee, and we had some fun. And she ended up, she wanted me to come down and do some more time. So that should be a fun show.
Awesome. I'll make sure to I got the live show coming up this week, so I'll make sure to mention it on air this week.
Yeah, it'd be great, man. Thank you. Yeah,
I'll make sure to give you a plug for that. So let's bring it home for people that want to follow Hugh on Twitter. It's at The Logic, LOGIC. Sorry about that. And, of course, you can go to his site, Hugh Daniel Murray IV.com. And, of course, you can also go to Get Involved Comedy, getinvolvedcomedy.wordpress.com, which, by the way, we got to talk about that afterwards. And, make sure to keep up with Hugh. We'll make this interview is going to be exclusive to MTR app owners initially, and then we'll be releasing it to the public. But make sure to hit up Hugh on Facebook or Twitter. Again, it was a pleasure, man. Hugh, thank you for taking us behind the mic.
Thank you so much for having me, Rich. I appreciate it, man.
All right. You've just heard My Take Radio Behind the Mic with Hugh Murray. To find out more about Hugh, to check out his blog, and to see if he's performing in your area, make sure to head to HughDanielMurrayIV.com. That's HUGH, Daniel Murray, MURRAY, IV.com. We're also going to include links for his upcoming shows in the interview notes. If you'd like to learn more about Get Involved Comedy, you can go to getinvolvedcomedy.wordpress.com. You can also look for them on Facebook as well. Last but not least, very important, if you are an individual, you don't have to be a stand-up comedian that's dealing with substance abuse problems, drugs, alcohol, you can check out IamNotAnonymous.org/Hugh, and maybe you can get some assistance in that regard as well. If you'd like to listen to live episodes of My Take Radio, we air every Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, by heading over to mtrlive.com or gfqlive.tv. You can also find us on Twitter at My Take Radio, and also become a fan on Facebook or add us to your circle on Google+. This interview, of course, will be exclusive to My Take Radio app owners first. So if you want the official My Take Radio app, you can find it for Android devices on the Amazon Marketplace, iOS devices on iTunes, and of course for Windows devices in the Windows Marketplace. If you'd like to be a guest on a future episode of My Take Radio Behind the Mic or My Take Radio Beyond the Mic, you can email me at mtrhost@mytakeradio.com. All right, guys, thanks for listening. See you next time.